Welcome everybody. It is Crypto Moose and it's time to get loose. We've got a special guest with us here in the waiting room. We got Ken Olling. So Ken, do you want to let everybody know who you are and what is MELD?
Sure. Thanks, Mitchell. Hi everybody. My name is Ken Olling. I'm the founder and chairman of MELD. MELD is a layer one blockchain that brings some very interesting new ideas into the blockchain space. So we're a blockchain that also includes a lending and borrowing protocol and is formally connected to banking infrastructure. So at this level, MELD basically is a kind of a hybrid that makes it possible for people to keep all of their value and keep all of their assets on chain, and then they can use those assets and take them off chain as necessary. So it's a little bit like an on-chain bank at the base, but on top of that, you're able to build pretty much anything you want. So we have a developer program, we have infrastructure in place, so you can build games, you can build other DeFi protocols, you can build all kinds of stuff on top of it. So we're a kind of a formal L1. Our history came from Cardano. We started on Cardano, and we decided that we wanted to have more control over the transactions and gas fees and things like that when it's connected to payments. So one way of looking at what we do is kind of a side chain to Cardano, but we connect multiple chains to the MELD chain, not just Cardano, but also Ethereum, Avalanche, and other chains going forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a good explanation. So we've been covering MELD for a while on the channel. You told me you even saw a couple videos, which was cool.
Yep.
So this has been, an interview we've been waiting for. A lot of people on the channel are always like, when do you have more MELD content? They want me to just screen record, put more stuff out there. So from my perspective, right? So I'm not a coder, but I'm someone that likes investing. I read the white paper, and I got in the ISPO.
5 pages. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, like it was fantastic. And I like the vision of it. So what is the main vision for MELD? So if someone's getting into crypto, why would they be interested in MELD? What kind of problem is it solving? I see it, but how can you explain it to the new person?
So the original idea was that we were going to create a lending and borrowing protocol so that you could take your crypto that you own, that you didn't want to sell, lock it up and borrow fiat or borrow other crypto from. So that was the original idea. But one of the first things we did, we started reaching out to financial institutions to work with them, and they weren't interested in working with crypto companies. So then we started the process of getting access directly to the banking system. So we're still in that process because it's very slow. As soon as you touch the banking system, it's quite sort of painful. But we saw that there's a basic problem when it comes to transactions. So in the crypto space, when you have a blockchain, and the value of that blockchain goes up, the value of the tokens go up, so does the cost of the transaction. And eventually, you're not going to buy a stick of gum for 45 cents if that transaction costs you 45 cents. It just doesn't make any sense to do that. And we sort of were looking into this problem, and we managed to figure out a way to solve it. And in order for us to do that, in order for us to solve it, we would have to have our own layer one, because the architecture requires a different type of proof of stake blockchain. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make it possible for companies and people to be able to take and keep complete control of all of your assets, all of your value. You own your money. It is your money and nobody else's money. And no one has the right to take it away from you, freeze it, tell you how you're going to use it. That's kind of at the most core level. And when you can do that, and then you put financial products on top of it, then you can offer very powerful tools that are currently only available to high net worth individuals and large corporations. These types of tools you can offer to literally anybody in the world. So it flattens the playing field. So it flattens the playing field for pretty much everybody to be able to get into the financial space and use your own skills to build your own wealth.
Yeah, and I like that because when I think about crypto and, when I think about MELD, I talk about it all the time on the channel, right? Like MELD is your banking for crypto, and it's not just for, people that have money, and it's not, you don't want to spend $80 for, a gas fee for, like what Ethereum's like. So really, like, I've described it a couple times as if it's like there's MELD right in the middle, and it's interoperable with other blockchains, and you do your banking right, and it's simple, it's easy to use. Is that kind of still like, is that the actual goal, like that, if you zoom out?
Absolutely, absolutely. We've never been chain maxi. We've always been interoperability, and we've always wanted to connect the chains together. We see chains as kind of liquidity pools, and you're able to then bring that liquidity from one liquidity pool to another based on the type of protocol that you want to interact with. So we will and are interacting with other protocols on other blockchains, and those protocols are then interacting with our protocol, lending and borrowing, and projects that are building on our protocol. So for example, we're currently working with a project that's looking to get access to liquidity across all of the Avalanche ecosystem and bring that liquidity to the MELD chain for this particular protocol. And then they can use it there and they can go back in a seamless way. So we want to see more bridges, less walls.
Yeah, I like that. That's cool. I want to hit on one topic that I see a lot in the space. I know when I first started getting into crypto, you want to see things happen right away. I'm sure you guys have heard about it. You deal with it. Every project does, whether it's like Copy with gaming or whatever. People want to see things happen now, right? But for me, from my perspective, I've always been thinking what you guys are building, because I have I have a small business. I do video production. I do YouTube, but it's like you have to understand the amount of work, and you guys are treading new waters, right? Like you're creating a non-custodial wallet where you've got interoperability with blockchains, etc. Like what goes into that? And tell me about, like, I believe in what you guys have been doing. That's why we're here. That's why we're talking. I think this is cool. And I 100% have always believed in what you guys are doing, from the colors, the branding, everything. Tell me about that for you and your team. Like, what has it been like because I've been seeing it and I think you guys are crushing it. How does it feel on your end?
So if you were to ask me this question like a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, then I would have told you that it's incredibly frustrating, because you start out and you have plans to do something, and then you run into technical issues, which causes problems. And if that in and of itself was the only problem, then we would have been fine. But then you run into politics and macroeconomics when you're touching the banking system, and then regulation, and yeah, it just becomes a big quagmire and mess that you're trying to slog through. And crypto is inherently very fast platform, a very fast environment, which is why I got into it. Prior to working with MELD, I was working on a banking license in Malta. And after 3 years, I was just so frustrated I'd gotten nowhere. We effectively got to the point to submit the equivalent, the banking equivalent of a white paper to the regulators after 3 years. And so I wanted to move into a market that's much, much faster. Ironically, then, of course, I get back into the banking world, which slows everything back down. But yeah, I mean, up until a couple of months ago, it was very frustrating. Now we've launched lending and borrowing into testnet. We're very happy with the product that we've produced. We're very proud that we think we've done the best in the space when it comes to lending and borrowing. And our team is also kind of maturing and getting to the point to be able to move a lot faster. I'm very, very bullish. I'm very excited. I'm very happy that the market is back. And I'm happy that as a team, as an organization, MELD is behaving very well. We're performing well. We're going very fast. And yeah, it's right on time for the market speeding up and then MELD speeding up.
Yeah, I've been seeing that a lot. It's been really cool. So if someone wants to get into Meld, how would they do it? How would you explain it to somebody like, hey, do you just go to meld.com? I know I cover it on the channel, but how would you explain to it if someone who's interested in testing out what you guys got?
So yeah, the starting point would be meld.com. So get yourself a wallet. So once you have the wallet, then you can hold either, things on the MELD blockchain, assets in Cardano, Ethereum, Avalanche in it. You can use it to stake in Cardano. You can use it to stake MELD. And now, because we have testnet, you're able to start and participate in the testing of lending and borrowing. So effectively, what we have is a layer 1 blockchain and a wallet connected to some really interesting and really cool features. And just over the horizon, we will have lending and borrowing, as well as many projects launching on the MELD blockchain to sort of expand out that ecosystem.
Yeah, that's great. I just recently checked out the lending and borrowing, or it's called Supply Borrow, right, on
Yeah,
the
correct.
desktop. That was cool. So, how was that? Was that more difficult than what you guys thought, or was it? I'm impressed. I'm super. I did a video, so
Yeah, it was fits and starts. So the design and the sort of user experience has been more or less done since, I guess, April. We've done a lot of kind of revisions on it since April. But the technology has taken a lot of time to get together. The wallet and getting all the infrastructure in play has taken an enormous amount of time. Additionally, because we have some special features in the lending and borrowing, one of them being yield boost, this ability to have a much higher yield than you would have on any other platform. To do that, we had to have staking live on the MELD blockchain. So there were a handful of blockers in the way for us to get the lending and borrowing out that we had to develop, deploy, audit, and then launch. And so these kind of steps have gone in the order that we wanted them to. They haven't gone as fast as we wanted them to, but in the order that we wanted them to. And now we're at that point where they're almost all mature, and we're just about ready to go into the market.
okay, that's sweet. So I did write down a question here I had, Ben.
Yeah.
So going on with the lending and borrowing, we'll stick on that for a minute. Would that be one of the bigger things that you guys are trying to do, or do you think it's more of the staking and just the overall banking for sending and receiving? Because for me, I like the staking. We'll talk about it in a minute, but I feel like lending and borrowing, that's kind of the idea, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Lending and borrowing is the core activity that a bank does, right? So banks, when you deposit money in a bank, you're not actually depositing money in a bank, you're lending money to the bank, and then they're able to take that money and go use it however they want to use it. Lending and borrowing is that sort of core activity. And so, yes, you're right in the sense that it's absolutely core. There is a kind of a parallel part to that, which is the banking technology, sort of the off-chain part, the banking stack, connecting to banking payment rails. This technology and these connections are still under development internally, but they will sort of probably take the spotlight after the lending and borrowing goes into mainnet. And then once we get them up and running, then we'll connect the two together, and you'll be able to do your lending and borrowing, you'll be able to do your banking, and you'll be able to have all of these activities operating on chain if you choose to.
Okay, so when it comes to the lending and borrowing with fiat, how much more complex will that make things?
From our perspective, it's not really that complex. We already have the on-ramping and off-ramping partner live integrated. We've had that now for several months, since like September. The banking side, the actual part where you're doing a SWIFT transaction, or in Europe, a SEPA transaction, or connecting to a debit card, these are the parts that are very slow, very tedious, very high friction. They touch a lot of regulations, so there's a lot of back and forth you have to do, a lot of lawyers, this kind of thing. So I would say from the perspective of getting them all up and running and working, then it's a lot of work. It's a mountain of work. Connecting them together, not so much. So the connection part, we've solved that connection part for years now. But the ability to actually have the two up and running and then connect them, getting them up and running, that's been a longer process than we'd wanted it to.
Yeah, but that's fine. I mean, right now the crypto's going on, right? Like you got we must be in some kind of bull run or something, right? I mean, Bitcoin went
Absolutely.
from 16, 17,000 to 70. People are like, but anyways, Bitcoin tends to get all the liquidity. Then the alts will go. It happens when it happens, right? So MELD as a whole for the token, where can you pick this token up? Like, how can people get access to this token?
So you can get the token on DEXs in the Cardano blockchain. You can get them off of MinSwap, Sunday, Wing Riders, Moosely. You can also get them off of Uniswap on Ethereum, and you can get them off of Trader Joe from Avalanche. And in the coming weeks, you'll be able to get them off of a DEX that's launching on the MELD blockchain.
Okay, nice. So how about we talk about that? What is this DEX for the MELD? And
So
that's for people that don't know, it's a decentralized exchange. So that's a pretty big deal for your layer
yeah,
one.
exactly. So the DEX is called Azomi. It's developed by a Vietnam team. We're working very, very closely with them. We're supporting them heavily. We've helped out with the tokenomics, giving them a bunch of ideas, talk to them about integrating into the lending and borrowing. So it's a very close relationship. We're very excited about this. We're just super, super fired up. So I'll be going to Vietnam on the 20th and talking to them and working with them in regards to this. And the DEX is in testnet right now. So we've been testing it now for north of a month and a half. And we're hoping to get it out in, as soon as humanly possible so that we can start, trading assets on the MELD blockchain. We can start letting our community make, shit coins and meme coins on the MELD blockchain, do all the stuff that everybody enjoys doing and kind of casually in the crypto space.
So what are your thoughts about the Moose token?
Go for it. You'll have our full support.
We'll have a
100%
loose token.
support.
Yeah.
Moose token. There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. That's just a thought. Nothing should be taken as financial advice, okay? I trademarked Moose. All right. Okay.
you go.
So talk about MELD again. Just as a whole, like zooming out, layer one, you have the fiat, everything. How big of a potential is this? Like, I know in my head how big it could be, like, but in your mind, your team, obviously you guys believe in it. By the way, my favorite thing to do when I would drive on my way to work would be to listen to the Twitter Spaces, the original ones, the
Yeah.
MELD with us. That was cool. Those were great. So you still do them. You guys still do podcasts, etc.
Yeah.
But
We're
the
gonna pick them
initial
up.
ones, we're all
Yes.
waiting for the bank managers. When
Yeah.
bank, right? But MELD as a whole, like, how big is this? Because there's such a good use case in my mind.
So this comes back to the idea of why we ended up having our own L1, which is connected to transaction fees. So transaction fees are a huge problem. They're becoming more of a problem, obviously. On Ethereum, they're the worst, where you have, $100 transactions for a $5 whatever actual transfer, these kind of ridiculousness. And other chains are having the same problem. I mean, you already have L2s that are having, $1, $2, $3 transactions. You have a couple, I guess last month, Avalanche gas was higher than Ethereum gas for a day. So the way that the blockchains work, where you have a transaction, the fee you pay for a transaction is collected by the protocol, and that's given to the people that run the network, the sort of distributed, individuals like you and I. We run the network, decentralized, and we get a piece of every one of those transactions, right? So that's the block reward. And the problem with that is the people that run the network, they want the gas to be high. They want the transaction fees to be high. But everybody else wants the transaction fees to be low. So there's a misalignment of goals. And so what we said was, well, we have a lending and borrowing protocol. So let's connect the profit or the revenue from the lending and borrowing protocol to pay for the people running the network, to pay for the block rewards. If you do that, then the more money, the more TVL that's on the chain, the more TVL that's in the lending and borrowing protocol, the more the people running the network get paid. But it takes all the pressure off of the transaction fees. So our transaction fees are fractions of a cent, 0.0001 cent for a transaction. And we can keep it that cheap forever because we have no pressure on it. So we have an architecture that allows our blockchain to maintain transaction fees at sub 1 cent for an indefinite period of time without impacting the benefits that the people who run the network are going to get in the block rewards. And so from that perspective, from the perspective of a financial network that can grow, we have not an infinite, but we have pretty high growth in the same sort of something like an Ethereum or a Solana.
And that's a lot of things, right? Like that's bringing, like in my mind, like the best banking we've ever seen. Like, when you just, if you actually understand crypto, it's like, that is what I like to see. And not only that, but participating in it, creating a non-custodial wallet where you own your keys, now your keys, not your cheese, right? So like, is that why it's going to be so difficult for like to pull off? Because like, that's dangerous. Like how are you going to compete against that? Which is great,
Partially. Part of it has to do with the architecture and the structuring and the tokenomics on the crypto side. And we thought that was going to be the heavy lift. But ultimately, the heavy lift was interacting with regulators, interacting with banks in the United States that handle dollars. There's just this, and everybody probably watching this knows there's this stigma around crypto as being a scam or for criminals or all this kind of stuff. When you're not in the crypto space, then that's kind of your assumption as to what it is that is happening. Obviously, the ETF coming out has changed it pretty significantly, at least to a small portion of the market. People that are kind of more familiar with investing, they're not as skeptical about crypto anymore. So we're getting a little bit more adoption. But in general, people see crypto as scary and bad. And as a result of that, you have, political polarization, which especially in the United States, which has caused, all of the regulatory problems that exist there. There's a lot of fear in the banking system of, suffering the same fate that Signature or SVB ended up suffering. And so people just became very risk averse. And then when they become risk averse, that generates a huge amount of friction when we're trying to just simply, give people access to a deposit account and a debit card.
Yeah, for sure. Like I'm from Canada, right? So I did live in the States. I went to school out there. I played baseball out there.
Okay.
So when I moved back here, that's when I first started learning about whatever it be, ideologies, the left, the right, everything like that. Like I was there when Obama was president, Trump was president. And then I started learning more about money, right? Then I saw Bitcoin and I'm like, this is interesting. Because I was
So what
into
got you into
computers.
crypto?
I know, that's a good question. I saw a documentary. I saw the documentary. It was one of the ones with like, I forget the name of the guy, but I saw a documentary and it just made sense
Okay.
because I understood what money was and I understood the store of value and the idea of really just not overprinting money, having a fixed supply. So for me, that was the intrigue of Bitcoin, right? It was the fixed supply, the fact that anyone could participate, and it was decentralized, right? And I saw the power that it would give. Like, it sounds weird, but like I saw the potential of like where we would be 5 years ago to now to like this will work because everybody wants to participate in something and people want to get some of their power back, right? Like
Absolutely.
that's the way I see it. And when I think of MELD, it stays true to that. Like that's why I talk about it on the channels, because you guys are building something that's for people. And like, is that how you guys feel on your end?
100%. I mean, the aha moment. I was in crypto in 2018, but the aha moment was definitely GameStop. And when that became such a poignant moment where you can see very clearly the manipulation of the money system. And it's not like I didn't have my eyes opened or anything like that. It was at a point where I could contrast, or I could compare Bitcoin versus the dollar. And I could say, okay, had this set of circumstances happened in the crypto space, one, it technically couldn't happen, right? Because the crypto space is governed by math, and you can't oversell shorts in a mathematical system. It just doesn't allow for it. And you can't shut things down because it doesn't allow for it. You can't, it can't be a powerful person making a phone call saying, make sure that I don't lose a bunch of money. That just doesn't work in the crypto space. It doesn't work with the way that Bitcoin was built. And so when I saw all the mess that GameStop turned out to be, then I was able to kind of compare, and I would say, okay, now I get the value proposition of programmable money, of Bitcoin, of it being decentralized. And that kind of like sent me down that path from the perspective of really understanding its value proposition rather than understanding the technology.
So yeah, staying on that too. Well, you asked me like, why did I get into crypto?
Hmm.
Well, part of it too is you mentioned it kind of earlier, is it's the fact that it's 24/7. So I remember, I was working on a farm. So my parents own a farm. So I'd be working on the farm and I'd save money, and then like things would just cost more, right? Especially in Canada, you bought a home before COVID, a couple 100,000. Now it's 500,000, a million.
Yeah.
It's crazy here. So it's similar to U.S. kind of situation, right? Maybe even worse in Canada.
Everywhere is getting, super.
And and it's tough, right? You go from like 20 to in your 30s, and you're like, dude, things are 40% more, like, or whatever it is. So that kind of happened years later. But for me, I remember I set up an Exodus Eden account. I bought $100 worth of Bitcoin, ended up buying ETH when it was like $80. I bought a couple coins, spread it across all these alts. I think it was like Civic. It was on Exodus Eden. And then I opened up my laptop, and I'm like, wait, I got $1,100. I put in 100, like something's wrong. And then I went to buy stocks because, that's what you learn from your parents, right? Like, oh,
Right.
you should get some stocks, get Apple, whatever it may be. And I'm like, wait, it's after 5. I can't even buy this. Like, why? Why can't I buy it after 5? So I just started questioning the world and things. And that's kind of how Crypto Moves was born in a
Nice.
way. But really, I mean, I question a lot of things. And then down the road, I found this MELD paper, and here we are, which is pretty cool. So going into 2024, 2025, what are the goals? What's happening for you guys?
The goals, we have two goals. The primary goal is to fulfill the initial promise that we started out with the ISPO. So to deliver lending and borrowing, deliver the banking stack, connected them together, offer people the ability to have a bank account and on ramp and off ramp, keep all their value on chain if they want to, and then take it off chain on demand. Right, when you buy your cup of coffee, then it goes from crypto into fiat. So that's kind of the first step, right? Then the second step after we've done that is to be able to provide people with instruments that allow them to accumulate wealth, indexes, RWAs, access to the bond market. Once you've actually solved the basic banking component, then you want to be able to build on top of it. So those are the two goals. I guess a secondary goal is, or kind of a parallel goal, is to really kind of foster the MELD ecosystem and get developers and get more projects using our system, building on the MELD blockchain, integrating with the banking stuff, integrating with the lending and borrowing, and kind of build out the ecosystem. So it's, one of the things that people talk about is, okay, MELD has got their own L1, they're a banking layer one, but we're not a banking layer one. We're the layer one that solves the banking problem so that other people can build on top of it. So you think about it as like a small town. You have a small town, town doesn't have a bank comes in, sets up in the small town. That doesn't mean that once the bank is set up, more banks can come. What it means is the bank sets up, more businesses can come. So that's kind of our metaphor, our thinking. If we can solve this banking problem, if we can solve the, value on chain and off chain, make it easy, make it fluid, solve the lending and borrowing part, which is the sort of core to banking. If we can solve that and make it open for other people to use, then hundreds of other projects can build on top of it and build whatever kind of their imagination wants to sort of solve. But they can rely on the fact that the core banking problems have been solved and they can connect to them and use them.
Yeah, I can visually see that. When I think about MELD and what you guys are doing and all that, it's like, you can really take like ownership of what you have, like your assets, right? Because when you have your assets, right, a lot of times, at least, whether you're using fiat in Canada, a lot of people, they just leave their money in their bank and they're not educated on it. They don't understand it. Cause like for me, I have like basically most of my wealth in crypto. And
Yeah,
I'm like, at least now I can lend and borrow against it. You could yield farm. So you can provide liquidity to a DEX. Other people can trade. And it gives you a sense of power back. Like that's what you guys seem to be. I'm
100%.
excited to use it, right? Because of that. Right. And
We when you start to understand how the tools that exist, and ironically, the tools that we're talking about are some of the oldest tools in the banking world, right? This ability to take something you already have and borrow against it. And think about it this way, right? So large corporation, they raise a bunch of money. What do they do with that money? They take all the money and then they go buy a building. They don't do what the business is supposed to do. They buy a building. And why do they buy a building? They buy the building and then they can buy that building, they pay cash for it, and then they borrow against it. And so they get access to some of that liquidity, right? But the value of the building keeps on going up. If I borrow this much against the building, and let's say the value of the building is here, the value of the building keeps on going up. So now the percentage that I owe against that building is going down. We do this with houses, right? It's just a bit different. The way we do it with a house is you pay for a small portion of it and then you take out a 20-year mortgage. If you can pay for the whole thing and then you borrow against it, then you can use that money for day-to-day operations, whatever. This is how wealthy people do it. This is how large corporations do it. We want to be able to provide these tools for normal people to do it on a smaller scale or on a larger scale if they're successful. Making the playing field level for everybody. Doesn't matter whether you're a stockbroker in New York or you're made in Brazil. Everybody should get a fair shake. They should be able to sort of get access to it and fight the good fight.
it gets more challenging because if you have no assets, you can't really leverage your assets to gain more fiat, right? Because fiat's kind of like that vector for transmitting wealth, right? So it's like, it's that energy if you want to go the Sailor route of it. But it is true. It's like, how do you get assets and how do you borrow against it and then kind of continue to have something that appreciates, right? Like, how do you actually build your wealth? Well, use MELD in the future, right? So that's the way I see it. Is that like your ultimate goal? Is that your guys' ultimate goal for it? Right?
That is the ultimate goal.
Like, I want to be using MELD. Like, I have the app, the testnet. Great. I did a video on it. Guys, check out that video. But if you could imagine, like, it's 2030 or whenever it is when crypto's really taken off, I think it's going to take a few more years.
Yeah.
What would warm your heart if you saw happening with MELD?
What would warm my heart is if we have a mobile app that's coming out soon. What would make me really happy, would make me feel like we've achieved what we've set out to achieve, is if I walked into a shop like a store, a local store, in Estonia, and the person that was already in the store that was checking out, they used their mobile phone and they tapped the mobile phone of the store owner, and they were able to pay using the MELD network just by touching their phones together. And the payment was instant. The merchant didn't get charged 3% like they do with Visa and MasterCard. There was, protection from fraud for a period of time on the transaction. And everybody was able to maintain their own money and not have to worry that it was going to be, frozen or locked up, or, some system was going to be triggered and they weren't going to be able to pay their house loan, whatever it may be. These kinds of things happen all the time. So that would make me really happy, is if we can see this idea of a global payments platform based on this foundation of core banking services on the MELD blockchain with hyper cheap transactions. That's kind of the ultimate goal.
Yeah, that's sweet. Because, I mean, you think about Bitcoin, why it's worked is because there's no central authority over Bitcoin, really. Like, it's a decentralized way of sending value, like tokens, right? But like MELD, it's kind of like the decentralized way of banking. Like, if you dumb it down, right? Like, that's right. Because
think of Bitcoin as kind of like the purest form, and MELD is not a purist approach. MELD is kind of an approach that understands that we still live in the fiat world. A MELD is an approach that understands that we still, have Visa and debit cards, that, we have one foot in one side and one foot in the other. And we're trying our hardest to get the best out of both sides, not the worst out of both sides.
what's the thing? Like, people still want to shop. Like, I find myself all the time. It's like, the feeling of buying something, right? It's fun to do. Like, day to day, I think people, you become accustomed to it, addicted, but,
Sure.
you got to buy your food. It's not a bad thing that we have to use fiat, but it's just anyways, there's so much to it, right?
Yeah, I mean, fiat is one thing. I don't agree with the idea that everything should be Bitcoin. Everything should be decentralized. Countries need to be able to maintain their own sovereignty when it comes to their economic system. Countries that don't have control over their own economic system are very weak. And so I understand the value proposition there, but there is just as much an argument for that as there is to have a international currency, a currency that nobody has control over. And up until now, it's been the dollar since around, the 1920s. And what we're seeing a major contender in Bitcoin and other currencies, other cryptocurrencies. They're not threatening native national currencies. They're threatening currencies that have an ambition to be an international currency.
Yeah, for sure. So for you, when you think of Bitcoin, what does it mean to you today, and what did it mean to you when you first heard about it?
First heard about Bitcoin, I thought it was absolutely silly. Totally made fun of people that were buying Bitcoin at like $200 now. Who's laughing? It wasn't until the GameStop event that I really kind of got the aha moment. For me, Bitcoin is it might be a flawed product, but it has first mover advantage. It has pedigree. It is kind of that perfect asset in a naive way. And I think it's kind of the holy grail. Yeah, it's not the holy grail, but it's kind of it's the yardstick. I guess that's the way of saying it. It's the yardstick for which everything else is judged in the space. And as long as it is the yardstick, then it's going to have the central place. And it's going to maintain that kind of bar. I think that the danger we have right now with Bitcoin is for Bitcoin to become centralized. And formally centralized, right? Centralized, and then people start regulating it as a centralized asset, and then it's kind of lost its prime directive if that happens. So I think that from our perspective, there's two major fights we have to fight in the space, in the crypto space. The first is to make sure cryptocurrencies don't become centralized. This is one of the reasons why in our lending and borrowing, or sorry, in our staking, we state the location, so that we're able to constantly look at all the different locations where the nodes are and say, are we being decentralized? Are we being decentralized? Is everything, are we seeing a trend towards more nodes running in America? If we are, we have to counter that. It has to be international. It has to be decentralized. And the second, which is even more important, is the non-custodial wallet. So some governments embrace it, and some governments are doing everything that they possibly can to stop it. Because a non-custodial wallet is basically a person's ability to create their own bank account, which for me, that is at the most fundamental core of what it means to have a cryptocurrency, to have an international currency, have control over my money. And so I think that is going to be our number one fight. So that is the thing where we really have to make sure that we win that battle.
When you guys created your non-custodial wallet, like maybe you can dumb it down even more. Like, why is it important to have a non-custodial wallet? So I know what it means, right?
Yeah.
But how can you explain it to somebody at a beginner level? Like, what does that mean?
So it's the ability for you to decide how you want to store your money or your value, right? You get to make the decisions as to how you handle it, where it's kept, how safe it is, the way in which you keep it, who has access to it. It's under your control. And currently with banks, nothing is under your control. You can't even, there was this video that went viral a couple of months ago where this Australian guy was trying to withdraw money from his bank account. And in Australia, there's actually a law that says they will not give you your money until you tell them why. And this kind of illustrates the idea very, very, very poignantly. Once it's in the banking system, it's not your money because you've lent it to somebody. And it's up to them, it's up to their discretion to lend it back to you or to give it back. When it's a non-custodial wallet, it's yours. No one can take it from you. And you saw this in Canada, right? You had this trucker. I didn't go into the details. This trucker strike, right?
Yeah. Let's not talk about that. I'm kidding. No.
Happy subject, huh?
No. You can talk about it. I'm joking.
No,
It's
but I
just
mean,
funny.
they
No,
had-
but for sure, like they froze bank accounts during the, I don't even know what we could talk about on YouTube, but yeah, like basically during COVID, they froze some bank accounts of people that were protesting.
they were trying to do fundraising, right?
Yeah, I mean that's a whole convo on its own, right? So,
I mean, if you
100%.
can't- yeah.
But 100% though, it's like, is it even your money though? That's the real question. So, for example, this is mine, right? I have a Trezor, I have a Ledger, I have a Tangem. Like this is cold storage. So basically, that's a non-custodial wallet, meaning I own the keys. And
Yeah.
in fact, it's even encrypted in a way where only I can use it. So I actually own the tokens or the NFTs, the non-fungible assets, the token asset ID numbers. I own them. So with banking, right, you give up your ownership of your money in a way, right?
You give up your ownership of your money for convenience, right?
In why, but people don't tend to question it as much as I think they should, right?
And that's fine. It's, everybody has their own kind of threshold for what they want. And it is not a problem. Let's be very clear. If you give your money to the bank, it isn't a problem until it's a problem, right? So most of the time, like my parents, they never ran into any issues with banks ever.
Yeah, I rarely do either. Yeah. Like I mean, it's not like I'm a crazy multimillionaire, but I think a lot of people do need bank accounts too. Fun fact, I gave my grandma some Bitcoin. She lost her keys, then found them. I'm like, Grandma, it wasn't a lot, but she's like 81, but like she actually has some Bitcoin. So nobody attack her. The moose is gonna come after you. Yeah, like, but she needs a bank account. You know what I mean? But the next phase of you know, what is it, Gen X or whatever is coming
Yeah.
out next? Like, I'm a millennial, right? So the next generation of kids that are growing up, they're going to want to play with this crypto. It's
Yeah.
faster, right?
It's
Like
native to them,
it's
right?
open up 24/7. But
I
getting
mean,
on that too though, like that's part of why I created Crypto Moose. That's why we're talking, is because I like the idea that I can leave somewhat of a legacy to at least educate and get the word out and have a conversation around non-custodial wallets and giving people the option. Because for me, I believe in free speech. I believe you should be able to at least think for yourself and not be told what to do. You should be able to question everything. That's what I believe. So I don't know about you.
yeah,
I assume so.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's imperative that you have control over your your life and sort of what you're supposed to do, and but at the same time, that comes with responsibility. And this is kind of where the conversation lies, is what is the, and it's an individual point that you have to come to as a single, as a person, is where do you sit in regards to the responsibility versus convenience? Because every time you choose
Yeah.
convenient, you're giving up the responsibility.
But
You're
it's
handing that responsibility over to somebody else.
but authority and responsibility go hand in hand, because if you have responsibility over your crypto, you should have authority over it. But if you give up the responsibility, maybe you don't even deserve the authority,
Mhm.
right?
I mean, it's one way of looking at it. I don't think people tend to look that far into the future when it comes to what they're doing.
Not everybody's a
Yeah.
moose though, you know?
Sorry?
Not everybody's a moose.
No.
I'm making
True.
jokes, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's a slippery slope, and I think that like I said, it's like it's not a problem for anybody until it becomes a problem, right? And but when it does become a problem, if you don't have access to that, then there's really nothing you can do about it. And at the same time, then there's nothing you can really complain about either, because you've had the opportunity to sort of take the steps to take control over it, and you've given those up for convenience. And so that's the downside of convenience, is like you said, you no longer have authority over it.
Yeah, that's dope. So when you think about MELD, okay, so you have MELD, and then you have like your traditional bank account. Because you have the authority over you have a non-custodial wallet, you own your keys. What exactly does that mean then? And
So
how is that a benefit if we could really just make it general? Because that's kind of like a reverse question of it, where it's like, what does it mean then? How
so the
powerful
way
is that?
yeah, so the way that we approach it is the 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 bank side of it is basically a gateway to interact with the traditional world. So you keep your, for example, dollars. You keep your dollars on chain, and when they're on chain, you could generate a yield against them, right? So then you have this kind of the equivalent of like a savings account. So your dollars are on chain, and they're earning a yield. But when you want to buy that thing in 7-Eleven, or you want to go on that holiday, then you can use your debit card. And when you use it at the point of use, then those dollars on chain go off chain into the card to the merchant. So that's kind of our vision, is that it's an off ramp. It's a point at which you want to spend that asset, not a place for you to store the asset. And you can, of course, when we launch our banking services, you will be able to have a traditional debit account. You can store all of your money in the traditional banking system. That's no problem. It's important that we make it so that everybody can use it the way they want to use it, not what our vision is. That's kind of our vision, is the idea that the blockchain is a store of value, and then accessing or connecting it to the bank is a method for you to be able to use that value.
Well, to me, it's just leveraging the potential of where we're at today in the modern world, really, right? Because it's like I'll give you an example. So it was like 3 weeks ago. I wanted to sign into my bank account. I think I was sending an e-transfer. So I was sending money to another account or paying a bill, whatever. and I couldn't even get in my app because they were updating it or whatever it was. And I'm thinking like I can grab my crypto, I can grab some ADA, some whatever, and I can just send it anywhere right now and pay nothing. You know what I mean? So it's like I have authority over the tokens. Like that's where I like the idea of MELD. It's like I want that like in my wallet so I can manage my crypto for me anyways, and then use my card. I love that.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't people want that? Like that's great.
If you think about kind of what is the role of a bank, the role of a bank, when you boil it down, is very simple. It's to take an asset from point A to move it to point B. And the fact that it's kind of been wrapped in massive degrees of jargon and complexity to make it seem more important and more complex and more valuable, is just kind of a sign of the times, or a sign of the role that it has in society. But the reality is, its job is to just take it from point A to point B. And Bitcoin has solved that, and then ever since we've tried to perfect it even more. And MELD is an example of trying to perfect it even more. But that's what you're trying to do. You're just trying to move an asset from point A to point B. And if you want to do something with it that's more exotic than that, like make it yield, or like you said, yield farming or lend and borrow or something, then you're going to be better off doing that in the crypto side than you are going to be in the traditional fiat side. Because on the fiat side, it's slow, it's expensive, it's lots of regulations, massive amounts of limitations. It's just easier if you're able to do it, if you're able to do those functions on the crypto side, because they reflect the kind of digital nature of the way that life is today, not the way it was in 1908 or 1909 when the US banking regulations started to kick in.
Like where we're at today with what we're using, like you think about the layer ones, I describe it as like it's like the plumbing, and layer twos and threes, that's what people will use, like the apps, right? Things will become more tokenized in a way. Like whether, let's say, buildings, physical real world buildings will be NFTs or they're tokenized. That's where it's like you really start to see the vision of it all, right? Or you can buy stocks, because you're talking about the friction of it, right? It's like, using crypto, it's more exciting if you want to generate the yield. But if Nike is like a token version, wouldn't that kind of make it a little more quicker or volatile or whatever? Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
It would be that, but I mean, you already start seeing the tokenization, especially in new things, right? Most AI projects in the traditional space have some degree of tokenization connected to them. ChatGPT is tokenized, right? So when you go and you use ChatGPT, you spend a token for some sort of AI compute time or power or something like that. And so we're seeing this idea of tokenization kind of mature and spread across all kinds of industries. And if you can then assign a value to it, because it already has a value, you pay X amount a month for ChatGPT and you get X number of tokens. Those tokens now have a value. And if you can sort of do that on a broader scale, then you have this kind of global system of value that can be passed between people in a very fluid manner. And it opens up for so many more business ideas and opportunities and ways to connect things more efficiently. But we're just starting to scratch the surface in regards to how this works, and you're starting to sort of peek behind or peek onto the future as to what it's going to look like.
Yeah, that's sweet. Do you think more people are waking up today to the idea of MELD and just the idea of crypto? Because that's kind of a big. It's not just we're at the point with technology, but I think people are starting to like view things different. Do you agree with that? Do you think people are starting to view crypto more in the sense of what it was originally designed to do?
No, I don't. I think that, we are getting more people interested in MELD. I think we see about anywhere between 200 and 800 new users coming on every day. But when it comes to crypto adoption, I don't think that we're seeing much in the way of crypto adoption. I think that In some countries, you're probably seeing more of it. Places like El Salvador, where it's kind of top of mind when they understand the monetary policy and they understand the value proposition. Places like Brazil, probably a bit more. Places like Argentina and Nigeria. Nigeria obviously sees the value in it. There's a huge percentage of Nigerian trade that's done in Bitcoin rather than in any other currency, because using dollars for trade in Nigeria is such high friction to work with the banks. They just kind of abandoned it. They said, we just can't be bothered with it anymore. We're gonna solve the problem ourselves. I think that if and when Western Europe and America and Australia wake up and realize that crypto and specifically Bitcoin is a hedge against inflation, if and when that happens, that's when you'll start to see mass adoption. So most often when it comes to new technologies, it takes a lot longer than you expected to be adopted, and it takes a lot shorter than you expected to have a massive impact. And so I think we're still in that point of being optimistic when it comes to the time of adoption. But when it does happen, it's going to come 100 times faster than anybody had ever anticipated.
So it's kind of like the idea of like you underestimate what you can do in like a 10-year period, but you overestimate what you
AI
can
is
do
a
in a year.
perfect example, right?
Yeah.
AI is
Yeah,
a
I
perfect
mean,
example.
well, look at ChatGPT. Now it's already like a normal day thing, everyday thing. And it's like, I wish I had that when I went to uni. Like, are you kidding me? You could write for me?
People have been talking about AI for 20 something years. It's been kind of a part of the technology narrative for maybe 6 or 7 years. And then when ChatGPT hit, how long did it take to become mainstream? A month. I mean, no technology.
And now it's a problem too. And now it's a problem with younger kids too, right? Like they're using that tech in school.
Yeah,
now you have to use a different ChatGPT to make sure you didn't use the original ChatGPT to write. That's what teachers are doing, right? So
yeah, just asking ChatGPT if this was written by ChatGPT. Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, I think we're there. We're still at that sort of early adopter stage that, we still have a long way to go to have mass adoption. But when it does come, when they drop the other shoe, then it's going to come hard and fast.
So you think? Are you more of in the category of belief that it's going to take really fiat to like really take a hit? Like, do you believe it's going to take a lot for it to be mass adopted crypto in the U.S. and Canada?
I don't know. I think that the thesis that Bitcoin has about being a hedge against inflation, I think that we have a good chance of that playing out over the next 12 months. I think we have a good chance that America is going to wake up and they're going to see Bitcoin going through the roof. And everybody and their brother is going to scramble to get some Bitcoin to minimize the devaluation of the dollar in their pocket. I think it has a good chance of happening in the next 12 months. It doesn't mean the failure of the dollar, anything like that. This isn't a doomsday point at all. I mean, the dollar is still by a massive margin the number one currency on the planet, and it will continue to be for a long time.
Yeah.
But as an international currency, I think Bitcoin brings a lot more benefits than pretty much any other currency does.
Yeah, and it's pretty wild because I've seen a lot of the earlier kind of like Michael Saylor talking about his energy, etc. But I try to send it to some family or whatever, and they don't even watch it. But I got his points of what he was saying, and kind of the way you're talking about it now is I don't think people understand what it actually means as a store of value and how scarce it is. And I mean, what do we have the halving in 30 days from today's video? So, I mean, you're going from 6.25 per block reward to like 3.1.
Yeah.
Like, maybe you could talk about that too. So, like, in your eyes, you think Bitcoin is that severely undervalued right now?
My forecast is that Bitcoin in this run will go to 250. That's my forecast. I forecasted that probably in September, no, November, December, somewhere around there. And at the same time, I would have never in a million years have dreamt that we would go all-time highs in March. I was thinking all-time highs in maybe August, September. So I think all bets are off in regards to that. I think the ETF has sucked all of the oxygen out of the space, and it will continue to kind of just constantly and perpetually collect Bitcoin. Yeah, usually what happens, right? So in the case, let's talk about the stock market, right? If you have a stock that really hits hard, that's, you know, very successful, Apple's a great example, then you'll get a big run on the Apple stock. It'll run up all-time highs, and then the board will vote to split the stock. If it runs super hot, then they'll vote to split the stock 3 ways, right? You can't do that with Bitcoin. It's not like you can have a conversation about it. It's not like you can talk about it as an option. You can't, period. No conversation to be had. And so this idea of this asset that is absolute and that is finite, that you can count on behaving in a very specific way, there is nothing in the world like that. Not even gold. Gold you can go mine. You can have a new find in the ground, and then you can increase production. You have this inflationary mechanic. With Bitcoin, you only have a deflationary mechanic. You know, the people that have lost their keys, that's the deflationary mechanic. And so it's such a unique asset in that sense.
Oh, for sure. Like, it kind of reminds me. I've seen the Warren Buffett documentary where, I don't know, I think some guy was trying to get like an extra 25, 50 cents, and that's kind of the reason for Berkshire Hathaway. But like, you know, he hasn't done a stock split really.
No.
So like that's kind of like Bitcoin in a way. Obviously, it's different, but it's just kind of funny that it's like Bitcoin might be the one thing that's kind of like Berkshire, where it's like, you know, $500,000.
Ironically, right?
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin is divisible. We do know that, but you are right in the sense that to own one, you know, what is it, 100 million Sats is like a Bitcoin or something, 8 decimal points. Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. And so you believe that we'll go around 250. I was thinking 150 to 200. I was right about 50. I didn't really do it on YouTube or anything, but I was right about 50 around that time. Like, you know, just as a guess.
Yeah.
Now, if we go to 250, okay, let's say you're talking peak of the market, I assume. Now, does it stay there because now, you know, you could pick up the IBIT, you got all these ETFs. Do you think that this is something where Bitcoin, once it hits 250, it's not going to move from there as much? It won't be as volatile anymore?
You wish. No, it's going to crash like, you know, like nobody's business. It'll collapse in on itself just the way we're still going to see 30% corrections, you know, massive liquidation events. You're still going to see all this kind of stuff. It doesn't, the massive corrections or the volatility has nothing to do with the price. It has to do with the market cap. So we're only at like, what is it, a $1.3 trillion market cap? Maybe when it gets to like 15, $20 trillion market cap, then you'll start to see kind of much more on the stability side. You'll see corrections in the like 5% to maybe 8% range. But it's all about the market cap. The market cap is what makes it volatile. And until we can get, you know, closer, once we get north of gold's market cap, then you'll start to see a much smaller set of movements. But even in something like gold, you see 10% corrections or 10% movements in gold because it's only like 13 trillion dollars, right?
Yeah, only 12 trillion. I mean, it's just a bit more what the Moose has in his account. So,
I mean, this is a numbers game.
No, like, for sure though. No, for sure. I know what you're saying. So, like, you're in the belief that, like, this whole crypto is like we're so early still.
Yeah, if you think about it in market cap terms, before I worked with crypto, like I said, I was in trying to get a banking license, and that was connected to sovereign debts and bonds. And when I was doing this, I knew bond portfolio managers that had $1 trillion under management, north of $1 trillion under management. The fact that we broke the $1 trillion mark is a big deal, but in the financial world, it's not a big deal. There's lots of projects, there's lots of institutions out there that have north of $1 trillion in their funds, and so you become part of a special sort of class, but there's still, you know, a lot of people above you. We're nowhere near coming within the range of something like the bond market.
So let's just make like a prediction, if you can even say it or whatever. It's 2035. Okay, we're in a bull market. What would, like, you think Bitcoin's gonna be at like a 10 to 50 trillion? You think that, like, you know, you could see those type of things and that would be normal to you if it happened?
I don't know. I mean, I would have to look. Yeah, so 10 trillion easily, no problem. 10 trillion,
Because
50
that's
trillion.
like what, half a gold? Isn't gold like 20 trillion, something like that?
I think the last time I looked, it was around 13, but it might be different than that.
Okay.
I don't know specifically what the number is. But yes, 10 to 20 trillion, not a problem at all. 30 to 4, obviously, you know, it slows down as the number goes up. So we'll be hitting these highs slower as it takes more money in order to get to them. So I think that, but yes, 10 to 20 trillion is very realistic. $1 million Bitcoin is very realistic. We're seeing that kind of in the ETF is kind of a crystal ball in that sense. We're seeing the ability for traditional finance to interface with the crypto space and be able to use their skills to operate in our market.
So I have a good question for you then. What was your aha moment other than GameStop for crypto? And was it more related to Bitcoin? Because I think most people, it was the Bitcoin that kind of got them in. What was it for you? What was the moment where you're like, okay, like you know when you first know about Bitcoin, the next day you're looking at the market 24/7. What was yours?
What was mine? I don't know. I think it might have been ADA. It might have been Cardano. I think I got into ADA at around 9 cents. Yeah, I got in around 9 cents. And then it jumped up to like 12. And so I think that was kind of an aha moment. Up until that point, I wasn't really invested that much into the crypto space. I think also when I bought my first expensive NFT, that was a big aha moment. So it took me a while to figure out what this NFT thing was, but once I understood it, then it was kind of jaw-dropping almost.
So which NFT was that? I remember getting a couple. I thought it was an absolute joke, but I bought some ADA ones because I didn't want to pay $200 to buy an ETH one.
I bought a doodle for like $2,000.
Okay. Yeah, that's
so.
pretty, yeah.
But yeah, NFTs are the culture side of the crypto space.
Yeah. And you guys have NFTs. Maybe we'll talk about that too. Yeah. Let's talk about the bank managers. I love that thing.
Bank managers are great. And so it's our profile picture, our PFP. And we wanted to have the bank managers both be something that people could use for their profile, but more importantly, something that they could use for utility in the lending and borrowing protocol or inside of the system. And as a result of that, we've given the bank managers the ability to be used in the system. They will increase your yield when you use them on the supply side, and they'll decrease your interest rate when you put them onto the borrow side. So they're kind of like you can think of it as like a coupon or like a badge. There's a finite amount of them. I think currently there's like 12,000 that have been minted in total. We won't be minting anymore. and they'll basically be this asset that you can use to increase your value or decrease your debt in the space.
Yeah, yeah, they look cool and the colors are cool. I know the resolution's great too because I think I have 5.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
3,000 pixels by 3,000 pixels. They're pretty big.
yeah, they're really nice. And the other thing about them, what I thought was cool, well, didn't you have more people that were eligible, but we were kind of in a bear market, right? So
Yeah, you can
some
still
people.
you can still mint your bank manager. You'll be able to
Okay,
mint a bank manager until December 31st of this year.
okay,
So if you were part of the ISPO, then you have the ability to mint a bank manager for free. If you're not, then you have to go on to JPEG Store and you can buy a bank manager in the secondary market.
yeah, awesome. So guys, comment down below if you have a bank manager, or just go to JPEG Store, pick one up. I have tutorials how to do that. Let's talk about the diamond hand. So the moose got loose. He was
Yeah,
in the first epoch for the ISPO.
nice.
So the diamond hands are sweet. So compared to the bank managers, what does that do for the owner of that NFT?
So the diamond hands are for the earliest of the early adopters. They're the people that kind of voted for us in the earliest of days. And so we wanted to make sure that we didn't forget about the people that took the big risk in the very beginning, and that they got some value. And so as a result of that, in addition to your ability to mint a bank manager, I think it was the first 3 epochs, we airdrop diamond hands NFTs to those people. And what it provides you with is when we launch our banking services, you'll be able to get access to the banking services with no fees. So no subscription fees, transaction fees, no fees at all.
Yeah, that's sweet because yeah, that's something I've been excited about. All right, let's dive into the mobile app for a minute here. So we talked
Sure.
about desktop app. I'm gonna have visuals so people can see that. The mobile app. Where are you at now? What's coming down the road for the mobile app?
So this is in testnet. We have around 600 people that are testing it. So you have your cards down at the bottom. These represent your assets. And at any given time, you're able to send or receive. You get an overview, and then you can do this. You can click and you can look at all of the different types of assets. So it covers Cardano, MELD, Avalanche, Ethereum, and we'll do on multiple other blockchains going forward. So then you can swipe up, and you're able to see all your transactions. And you can swipe down. You can get more details and more information. Sending, so you can choose what you want to send. Put in your address and send it. So it's very fast. It's very beautiful. We're very proud of it. It's just about ready to be submitted to the iTunes store, and
Oh
we're going to
wow.
get it into people's hands as soon as we possibly can.
Yeah, I have the testnet too. I think I
Okay,
was
you
one of
have
the
it.
ones. Yeah. Here.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's cool. I did yeah, it was really cool. It was really cool to view it and see it. I did do a video, so yeah, I think I did like a first look kind of thing. So that was really cool.
It's evolved a lot since the first beta was released,
It's great.
whatever, a
I
couple months ago.
I think it's awesome. Like for me, I like the desktop because you can see everything big, but
Yeah.
this is just different. It's the app, right? It's kind of like using your phone versus your desktop. So, but I also have like an iMac, so it comes down to what you're doing. But this, maybe you could talk about that a bit. Is the vision for the debit card with the app? That is cool. So how will that synergize together?
So the debit card is like a very traditional debit card. It's connected to your account. It's connected to your fiat wallet, and if you want to, it will be connected to your crypto side as well. So you'll have the ability to link crypto to it, whether that's USDT or Bitcoin or Ethereum or ADA or whatever you want. And then when you go out into the city and you want to spend, then you can spend crypto or you can spend stable coins, or you can spend fiat off of your traditional account. The debit card is largely just a method of spending. I mean, you don't store anything on it. It has no real function outside of that moment of tap where you want to spend something, and then that tap initiates all the transaction chain in order to be able to get the whatever dollars, euros, yen, riad into the merchant's hand, so you can spend the money you want to spend.
Okay, so I just thought of something there. So I'm Canadian. If I go to the US, I cross the border. If I have my MELD debit card, would that make it easier for me to buy things in the States then too?
No, because the debit card is
Okay.
its own network. Visa and MasterCard are their own network.
Oh,
They
okay.
handle their own ability to deal with, different types of currencies. So it doesn't matter whether you're spending dollars or you're spending USDT or you're spending MELD. All those transactions that happen when it actually gets tapped is done in the back end either by the MELD network or by the Visa network.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's good. So I wanted to hit on something for your background. I saw this photo of, I think it was called, I don't know, it had your business card and it had your name on it and it said MELD.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Like, what were you like in high school or around that? I don't know when you had that card, but what were
I
you
was
like in the
flirting
early
when I had that
stages?
card.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. In high school, we didn't have computers and stuff like that. So there was no internet when I was in high school. So no, at the MELD, I got the MELD domain name in 1995. This is before you could register domain names. The way you got domain names at this point is you just sent an email to the internet and asked them for a domain name, and they sent it back to you. Said, "Sure, here you go." So I got the domain name because I was gonna actually make a magazine. And so again, this is 1995. This is the year that Netscape came out. Early stage of the internet. At this point, I was already doing interactive design. I was a designer, so my previous career is in design. And I wanted to make a magazine that featured interactive design. So that's what MELD stood for originally. It was music, entertainment, language, and design. And the sort of melding of it together. Remember, in 1995, there was no discipline called interactive design. There was no such thing as UI UX. It didn't exist. And so in lieu of that, I was playing with this idea of melding these different traditional disciplines together. And so that was the thought. But it was, best laid plans. I never ended up doing anything with the magazine. It just kind of sat there. And then I think in 2001, I was working as a freelance designer, and I kind of resurrected the name as the name of my studio. I did that for maybe a year or two. And then I think I went on and I started working in architecture. And so that kind of just fell by the wayside. And then purely by accident, not by accident, purely kind of by coincidence, the business that I had planned for MELD made a lot of sense for the name MELD. But the original name of MELD was not MELD. The original name of MELD was Core. So CORR. So I was originally planning on using core.com or core.io as the domain name and as the name of it, sort of core as in like the core, financial instruments that you can kind of stick something on top of. But then, I don't know, somebody pointed out that wouldn't MELD be a much better name because you can meld, fiat and crypto together. And that was, kind of became very obvious very quickly then. But yeah, so originally it was something else. And originally MELD was not MELD.
Yeah, I just didn't think anybody really knew about that. I think it was a Twitter post where you posted the photo, and I'm like, oh, that's cool, right?
Yeah.
Because like like a video production business, and it's Red Cape Films. So I have this
Yeah.
red cape. It's kind of like represents me in a way. Like grew up on a farm, and it's like a little boy like out on an adventure, right? But I brand the red color, and I think red of MELD kind of attracted me
Right.
too. There was no, the whole idea of a cape. So you even have
Yeah.
like kind of like some red stuff going on there too. So it's cool how things in the past kind of come to the future. Maybe that was it was meant for that, you know?
Who knows?
Who
I think it was
knows?
just the
Who
right
knows?
time, right place. But
Yeah.
we chose red because it was the most unbanked color you could choose.
I didn't know that.
So, I
That's
mean,
true though. I've had color theory courses where they teach you about colors, lawyers, you know, you got the browns and the stronger colors.
right,
Yep.
dark greens. And then you have, traditional business, which is all the sort of blues and greens and blacks.
Orange
Um,
leadership kind of thing, right?
yeah. And so red is much more of a fast food type of a color. Um, and I wanted to use a color that was, I mean, there are other banks that use the color red, like Santander, but I wanted a color that kind of really kind of took us out of the comfort zone, that made us work really hard to tell the banking story, not to make it easy and obvious and predictable and, samey like all the other ones are. And so that was one of the reasons why we picked red. The other reason was I did a study and I looked at like the top 100 DeFi protocols, and I took all their icons from CoinMarketCap, and none of them were red. Yeah, just sort of looking at where we could where we could fit in the market, and so then we went with red.
Maybe that's what I saw in it too, because like the red, I mean, even from the whatever it was, the white paper, light paper, it stood out because you had the, you know, that design. I think it said like "meld with us"
Yeah,
or something, or like I don't know if it was like "be your own bank" on the front or whatever, but you know, the superhero vibe, if that makes sense.
yeah. I mean, you can definitely draw the correlation with the cape, which is a sort of superhero icon, and then our torus, or this kind of swirly element, the
Yeah,
donut.
talk about that. You have an NFT. I did mint one. I minted the
Yeah.
first MELD NFT, so
All right.
I'll pop it
Yeah.
up. I'm gonna have a lot of visuals here. What is that thing? Why do I have that? Why did I mint that?
So that's the NFT that you get when you first bridge. So it was the sort of the thank you for sticking with us so till we ended up getting bridging working. We don't know what we're going to do with it going forward, but we wanted to sort of have the option to be able to do something with it. The torus, or the donut, is kind of the key element in the visual language of MELD, and it's stripy. It's blue and red. Blue represents fiat, red represents crypto, and it's perpetual and constant, right? So it always closes in on itself. So we wanted, it was a good symbol of the type of system we're trying to create. We don't do Ponzi, we don't do pumponomics. We try to build economic systems that are sound, that are built on value creation, that can perpetuate themselves. And so that's one of the reasons why we picked the torus, is because that's one of our principles, is this ability to make perpetual systems, or systems that don't fall out of balance.
Yeah, that's sweet. I think people get that vibe even when you look at all the graphics that you guys have. You get that flowy idea, right? Of
Sure.
everything in the whole meld,
Dynamics.
the meshing. Staking, that's the only thing we didn't really hit on.
Yeah.
So I did a 1 year lock staking. I think it's like around 10% APY, APR, whatever it is. I also did a 6 month that was liquid, so I could pull out in case MELD goes to $5.
Sure.
And then I also got into the Dega ISPO. I was also in the Dega ISPO for ADA, and for no, not for ETH. But anyways, talk about the stake pools. How has that process been? And
So yeah.
when can people get into them? Because they keep closing.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of part of the economic system, right? It's not pumponomics. We're not just giving away free money. So the idea behind staking is it's a core component to our system. We took a lot of inspiration from Cardano and Cardano staking. I think it's pretty much universally understood that Cardano is the only protocol to really solve staking properly. And so we were using that as an inspiration. and we wanted to add some additional features to it. So we have 4 different tiers of staking. So you can take your MELD token, you can stake it on the MELD blockchain, you stake it onto one of the nodes that is running the blockchain. So currently we have 30 nodes that are running live. So you stake your assets on the chain, and that secures the blockchain. So you're validating each of the different blocks that are being created, and you're validating the chain itself. And for that, you get block rewards. But we wanted to, like I said before, our block rewards don't come from the transaction fees. Our block rewards come from the lending and borrowing protocol revenue. So we needed to build a new type of staking because our chain is EVM based, but we're not doing the same kind of EVM related architecture that something like Ethereum or Avalanche use. And so we needed to build our own staking. So we have liquid staking. So you can stake and you can withdraw whenever you want. We also have 6-month, 1 year, and 5 year. So the reason for having these long-term locked staking is we wanted to be able to reward people that were willing to make commitments on our behalf. We wouldn't want to do it in a disingenuous way. So even if you are locked, you get an NFT, and that NFT represents your locked staking. You'll be able to sell and trade that NFT on the open market. And between the different stake pools, if there's space, you can transfer your position between the different stake pools. So you're not stuck onto a stake pool. So you think of it kind of like a bond. So you're not really locked, but you are locking up the asset. And if you lock up the asset for 6 months, I think you get like a 30% increase in the yield. If you lock up for a year, it's like a 100% increase. And if you lock up for 5 years, it's like a 300% increase in the yield. And so we wanted to be able to have that set of mechanics, both because that's how the architecture of our chain works, but also it's an open system, right? So other projects building on the MELD chain can use that staking mechanism as part of their protocol or as part of their yield farm strategy, right? And so this was such a core thing that we had to get this done before we did the lending and borrowing.
Yeah, and I think I've done like 3 or 4 videos on it. It's really cool. Transaction costs are cheap. It's very simple, very visual. That's part of me too, right? Like I do crypto video creation because I started out as like a video creator in the space. Talk about the visual aspect. So that is what I like as well about MELD. You have the staking, you have your all-in-one portfolio. You're gonna have the lending and borrowing, which testnet, guys, check it out. We'll have links down in the description for you. Comment down below if you've used it or if you have any questions. But staking has been really nice, right? And you see it every epoch. Is the epoch the same as ADA? Is it like every 5 days?
Yeah, we came to the same conclusion that 5 days was the best epoch structure.
Why is that?
1 day, if you have epochs that are 1 day, then your gas fees tend to go up because you have more transactions that you're tracking. If you do it for 7 days, it doesn't divide equally up into a 365-day year, right? So you get this. There's not a perfect fit when it comes to that. So 5 days just turns out to be this really nice balance of a period of time that people can relate to, and divisible directly into a 365-day year. And so with those 2 components, it just feels right. It just makes sense.
Yeah, it does. That makes sense, right? Even like, what is it, a 30-day period? You'd have like 6 epochs kind of thing, right? So that's pretty cool.
Well, yeah.
It's all math at the end of the day, right? For that.
Correct.
Yeah, that's
30
sweet.
Days, then it's kind of like to wait for 30 days for the reward. That'd be a bit annoying.
Yeah. So what about the staking? Like, is there going to be more pools that will open up? And why are they filling so quick? I think it's because there's so much demand for it, right?
There is so much demand, yes. So we have a lot of, I think we've got about north of 2 billion MELD already on the MELD blockchain. So yeah, I mean, we told everybody that we would have 30 nodes for now. until lending and borrowing goes live. Once lending and borrowing goes live, and we gauge the amount of sort of activity on the chain, then we'll start opening up more pools. What we don't want to do is we don't want to open up so many pools that the yield goes way down. It goes down to 1-2%. That's the challenge. It's finite, right? It's a system that balances itself out, and so 30 is all we're going to do for the time being. Once we go live with mainnet, then we'll look at that again. Our goal is to get to 101 by the end of the year. Then if we see demand beyond that, then we'll increase it. Because remember, the nodes have a role, right? They're not just sitting there for you to stake and get money. They have a role. They play a role. We don't have a lot of activity on the chain right now because projects are building and they're going to be deploying soon. So there's no reason for us to have more than 30 nodes on the network. We're already the largest blockchain in the Avalanche ecosystem by nodes. And so there's no purpose for it. It would just simply be, opening nodes for the sake of opening nodes. We do want to, of course, we hear everybody and that they want to stake, and we want to sort of make it available for them to stake, but we have to be prudent in regards to the balance between what people want and how the structure of the network works.
Yeah, that's great. That makes sense, right? At the end of the day, it's about the project as a whole, right? Like, I want to see the project do well. It's not just about getting in there, getting your profits, and you have a whole system to manage. New projects. So are you currently inviting people to build on MELD right now? Because you are layer 1, so you could build, projects on top. And so what are new projects? And maybe tell people how they can start building on MELD.
So if you're interested in building on MELD, you can reach out to us either via Discord or Telegram. I think next week we're going to be launching a bunch of developers tools. We already have tools available. So right now there's more than 20 projects that are launching on MELD. So the ecosystem is starting, and we're going to be very heavily supporting developers. We already have one of the big players in the space called Third Web. They provide tooling and infrastructure for wallets and smart contracts and data layers, data feeds. They're supporting the MELD blockchain. We have a couple of gaming projects that are launching games, a couple of DeFi projects. RWAs are also on the horizon. So there's a bunch of stuff that's coming out. It takes time to build, but you'll see the ecosystem really start to flower over the coming months.
Sweet. So what about like a DEX? Is that something is that something where it would be like integrated on on the, I don't know, not the mobile, but like the desktop app where you could like swap assets too?
Yeah. So once the DEX launches, we will be integrating Azomi into the MELD app on the desktop, MELD app on mobile.
Wow.
So you'll be able to go to the DEX and use, MetaMask or one of these normal wallets and connect to it and swap like normal. But you'll also be able to we will be integrating it into our UI and hitting the DEX on the back end the way you would normally do an integration with something like a Uniswap or a SushiSwap. So the DEX is going to be very exciting. We're really looking forward to that. We're very happy with the product and what they're doing. Like I said, we're working very, very closely with them to kind of like co-develop or kind of build, because a DEX is so important in the space. You need to have a really, really good DEX on your chain in order to be a real ecosystem.
Yeah, that's great. I think at whatever DEX you guys have, hopefully they could add a little touch of red to it. That would look kind of cool.
No red in it, unfortunately.
What?
Well, it's not ours, right?
Yeah.
It's not the MELD. It's not the MELD DEX. It's called Azomi. It's lime green and purple, I think.
Okay. Well, anyways, I'm sure it'll look great. Whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe just have a red backdrop and then slap the logo on top.
There you go.
Tell them to do a Zoom with the Moose and he'll fix it up.
Will
So,
do.
final question then, because I want to
Yeah.
respect your time. I really appreciate it. This has been great. Guys, comment your MELD questions down below. Guys, go to meld.com, check it out. I have videos on the channel. I'm showing you right now visually. Guys, I show you how to set up a wallet. I show you how to get into the staking, etc. We're going to be covering all this and more. USDM. Today we are Friday, March 15th, while we're recording 2024. USDM, that's going to be a Cardano stable token, right?
Yeah,
I don't know
great.
I don't know all that's involved, so maybe you can talk about it and how that will synergize, integrate with what you guys are building.
So we will definitely, Mehen, I think is how they pronounce it. Some of the people working on it are ex-MELD. So yeah, we're super happy for Mehen. We're super happy that they've managed to get USDM off the ground. We'll fully support it. We think it's fantastic that they're able to do this, and that they beat out Emergo, right? Emergo announced a stable coin a year ago, and they managed to deliver before Emergo did, which is good on them. So yeah, we'll be a big supporter of Mehen, and we'll make it available. You'll be able to bridge it onto the MELD blockchain. You'll be able to use it in the lending and borrowing protocol, all of the above. So we want to support them as much as possible. It's very important that you support people that you've kind of been working with in the ecosystem.
Awesome. So do you have anything else to cover? I don't know, maybe you have a banger of an announcement? Let's drop it right now, man.
Unfortunately, I don't have any announcements right now. We're going to do something next week, but I can't share it right now. But
That's
what I
all
can
right.
say is that if any of you guys are not familiar, we have an airdrop underway. So we're going to be coming out with some more material around the airdrop going forward. Any on-chain activity will help you guys in regards to participating in the airdrop. So go to the MELD website and click on the airdrop, and you can find out more details about that.
Yeah, that's sweet. So is that part of the MELD and Air airdrop?
Yeah.
And by the way, because I've been using MELD, right? Do I get any is it going to be points related for tokens, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll track your social and on-chain activities, and based on that, then there will be an airdrop after the lending and borrowing goes live.
Awesome. So how do people follow you?
You can follow MELD on Twitter at onmeld, ONMELD. You can follow me at Ken Blau, KenBlaue on Twitter. And if you're trying to reach me or you want to talk with me, then you can pop into the Telegram chat. I'm there every single day, and I'm happy to chat with you.
All right, awesome, man. So we're gonna wrap up this episode. I want to invite you all to check out MELD, and guys, check out the link tree. We have links for, hardware wallets, whatever you guys need, online courses, all that stuff. But check out MELD. I think what they're building is great. You guys heard it all here first. So that being said, the moose is loose, and we'll see you in the next one.